Welcome to Trauma Undone. I am your host, Natasha Phillips, and today we have with us Kelly Sullivan Walden. She is Dr. Dream and the author of a book that I absolutely love the title of, A Crisis is a Terrible Thing to Waste. Kelly, we are so happy to have you with us.
It's such a pleasure to be with you, Natasha. Thank you for hosting me and having this beautiful show. Thank you so much.
I mean, Kelly, you have a story. I am loving your book. I haven't finished it yet, but I don't even want to. And I listened to the audiobook and you have the most magnificent voice and I love the way you tell the story.
But
I have to say, right in the beginning of this book, this is the most beautiful quote that you put here, and it is just so true and so true about my journey. So that's why I want to read it. It is going down into the abyss that we recover the treasures of our life.
Yeah, Joseph Campbell said that. And he also says, the cave you feared to enter holds the treasures you seek. So yeah, it's in the dark places that we don't ever want to go. I was just saying to somebody yesterday, a crisis is a terrible thing to have, first of all, but it's also a terrible thing to waste. Like, we don't want to go into that dark tunnel and not come out with a handful of treasure. So that's kind of the point. Like, if you're going to go through some difficult times, which we all will do, some of us more than others, but let's get something out of it. Let's go in with an eye toward, how is this going to make me stronger, brighter, better? And if we look for it, we'll tend to find it.
So how did you come to have this perception? Because this is a very unique look on life.
Well, there's so many ways I could answer that question. I want to say, I haven't said this before, but I come from a family where there's 5 girls. I'm the oldest, and I've got 2 foster sisters. My mom was actually sort of the Dear Abby of the neighborhood growing up. She was the one that would always have a friend over. They'd be smoking cigarettes, drinking Tab Cola, and her friend would be telling her her problems, and my mom would be offering solutions. And my mom still does that to this day. So I think I got a lot of role modeling by my mom always sort of being a solutioneer, looking for what could be the fix for this thing. So I think I got that from her. But then I know I've gone through some things, and I write about right up front in the beginning of the book. I'm like, I just want to get it all out. Here's my nitty gritty shitty list.
I love that. By the way, I am adopting that. From the minute I read that, I was like, that is what I'm going to do in future.
Oh my God. I feel like, I've had so much shame about all these things. And I thought, whoever can read this list and still want to talk to me, then great, I'll talk to them, but I won't have to have the imposter syndrome. So basically the list in a nutshell, there's more probably than I'll be able to remember, but in my 20s, I was pursuing acting and had about over 100, it might've been way more than that, like #MeToo moments before there was ever a #MeToo, where there was all kinds of just indecent, hey baby, I'll make you a star. Oh, by the way, you got to sleep with this guy. And I come from a good Catholic family that wasn't like too far away. I lived in Whittier, so I always knew I had a place to go back to. A lot of girls that come to Hollywood don't have that, so it's a lot harder for them. Anyway, one person that I met who said, oh, I'm going to make you a star. You've got this, you've got that. And there was something convincing, so deeply convincing about him, not to mention all the pictures of celebrities all over his studio. It was like, oh, he's really legit. And he basically, little by little, groomed me and hooked me into becoming a stripper for a year. And it sounds like a crazy thing. Like, how do you just get tricked into that? But I felt like it was a much slighter version than what happened to Patty Hearst, and where there was a lot of this kind of Stockholm syndrome. And I felt like I had to do what he said. Anyway, one of the things on the list is I was a stripper for a year. And then after that, I contemplated suicide twice. I was in awful relationships where I was rejected, conned, stalked. I was up close and personal with the mafia, hopefully no longer. Just kidding. I think I'm in the clear. It's been a while. Shoplifted, bounced checks, dropped out of school, jumped off a cliff into what seemed like a good idea, a 60-foot cliff into water, and I landed on my ass, and that almost killed me. Took a hot air balloon, it crash landed in the middle of an animal sanctuary, a wild animal sanctuary, lions over there, giraffes, tigers, oh my, and me and my friends, and lost a bunch of people. I've gone through the loss and death of two of my lifetime best friends, a baby I was scheduled to adopt, and that's a whole story. And my dogs. I've always been the girl with, like, everyone thought I was a dog walker because I always had so many dogs, and one by one they all passed. So there's others too, but there's just oh yeah. And in the time it took me to tell you this, I've had one of the 50 hot flashes I'll have today. And so, yeah, so with all of that, plus my clients that I've worked with as a hypnotherapist for the last 25 years, I know what the word crisis means, and I know it's a terrible thing to waste.
So I want to know, like, how did you start your journey into this? Like, I mean, you help so many people now, and but how did you get into, like, I'm always curious as to how people go from being in crisis, or having trauma, to moving through that, and then not only just moving through it to live a fulfilled life, but to moving through it and then use it to serve others.
You know, there's like every single one of the stories in this book is a crisis moment. So it's not like there's a crisis and then there's a breakthrough and then I'm done. And then it's just happy, happy, happy. I mean, there's a lot of happy. I've had a very happy life. I've had a lot of blessings in my life, for sure. So I don't want to just paint a picture that's all one color, but with each one, I feel like I found the light in a different way. And ultimately, at this point, I'm 54, looking back over my life, I realize there are certain things in common that I did to pull me out of each of those things. And granted, this Ogle formula that I talk about,
amazing.
I didn't call it that back then, but it was basically what I was doing in every instance. And so basically, it all crystallized recently, actually, just a few years ago. I was on my way to see my sister, who I don't even write about in this book, and that would be a whole other book, but she's the most difficult person in my whole life, and she's my biggest champion, but it's always difficult with her, like mental illness, but I thought, okay, I'm going to have a breakthrough with her. I'm going to take all the tools I have to be able to come through our difficulties, and I'm going to use this as a sharing tool with her so we can survive, so that I don't get beaten up, because things would get violent with her. So I wanted to try this. So I tried it and it worked. And then all of a sudden it became this, like, I felt like the angels were singing. So should I share what this thing is? So this is my formula for how to overcome and find your way through a difficult moment, a difficult catastrophe, crisis, whatever. So OGLE. The idea in Ogle is to really look at something. I'm kind of taking back the definition of Ogle. I'm getting rid of the lecherous version of Ogle and making it a transformational thing. So O stands for have permission to notice what is offensive about what happened. So if somebody was violent toward us, we have a right to say that was excruciating, that was scary, that was a violation, and it caused fight, flight, freeze, all the F's, and like notice all that was offended by that. Give yourself permission to be in that as long as it takes, but with an eye toward we're gonna crawl our way out of this. We're not going to just keep recycling, because it's possible to keep recycling unless you know there's like a rope ladder to climb out. So the G is the next letter. The G stands for what's good about this. And hopefully people don't punch me in the face for even suggesting that there could be something good in the midst of a crisis.
So I want to interrupt you for a second.
Please.
Because I think that's where people get so stuck.
Yes.
I know that for me, part of my healing and transformation was that I had this, like, I think it was the beginning of 2020. And I had this, just during my journaling time, I had this like constant thought popping into my head. What am I grateful for my situation?
Yeah.
What can I be grateful to that person who had caused so much harm?
Right.
And so eventually I started making a gratitude list. And I think I did it for months, like just writing out, forcing myself to think about what am I grateful for this person, even if I was writing the same thing over and over and over again. And that really, I want to say, transformed my journey and distanced me from the emotions that I was feeling.
I would say maybe not even distancing from the feelings, but that this is alchemy. I mean, if we jump straight to the what's good about this without giving ourselves permission to be offended and to be hurt and feel all the negative things, then maybe it is distancing, like kind of a disembodiment. But I think when you get to the place where you can consider what could be good about this, what's good about this, or what might be good about this on a far off planet, like in some suspended reality, what might be good, I think that's where the alchemy starts to happen. So it's not even, I wouldn't say for myself, it's distancing. It's more like the journey continues and there starts to be this new awareness. So in the gratitude, and G, that also is a G word. And I was going to say gratitude. I'm like, should it be gold? But I thought it seemed like the thing that I kept going, I kept landing on what's good about this. And that kind of includes gratitude and gold. But it's kind of like, how might this, like, I just remember this one night, I was it was at the end of a breakup of a relationship. And for whatever reason, it was Valentine's Day night. I was in a hotel room in Chicago by myself. And I think I had so many plans for this relationship. I was so invested and it just abruptly ended. And I was so hurt and I couldn't stop crying. This is probably a really bad story, but in the midst of my like thrashing, and it felt like there was no end, all of a sudden this little thought popped in. Well, at least now I know what a serial killer must feel like. And I'm like, wait, that's not good. But it was like, oh, I understand what would cause somebody to harm other people. And I felt like there was something good about that because it gave me a compassion to understand why people do bad things. And I thought and there was some purpose in that, even though that was not like, yay, this is good. But it was looking for something good, and I found one thing. So if we can just start with, even if what's good is that this pain will give us compassion for somebody else that's in that kind of pain too, then we might be able to help them. We might be able to, I mean, we can't help people if we can't relate to them. And we can even if we're not talking to them, if people just know that we've survived this thing and they know that we're out there, that's something. I mean, I could go on and on, but I'll move to the L just to move along. You get the idea. Once you get into the G, the gratitude, the what's good about it, it's kind of never ending. And I love that you started to do that. The gratitude list just kept going and going. And that's when that's when we start getting our power back. And then I think the L takes it to the next level, because it's kind of the next level of difficulty is to go to the L. So the L is for the looking glass, the mirror. So it's where we ask ourselves, how do I also do this thing? Even if it's just to a tiny microscopic degree, how am I also violent with myself?
Well, that's exactly it. It's just that I actually mentioned this in so many of my interviews, but I always find it just so, one of my quotes for the year is, we allow ourselves to be abused to the standard that we abuse ourselves.
Ooh, exactly.
Allow other people to abuse us to the standard that we abuse ourselves. So if you're looking at those situations, I now having had that understanding is like, well, I obviously do that to myself.
Right. And that's like good news, bad news. I mean, the bad news is I'm doing that to myself. I am my own worst critic. I am my own worst bully. Nobody can hurt me more than I can hurt myself. So that's the bad news. But the good news is I'm now aware of it. I can do something about this now. I can't do anything about what you do, what anyone else does, but I can do so much about what I do. So this is the good news. And this kind of relates back to dreams, because I'm known as Dr. Dream. I'm a dream expert.
I want to get into that stuff with you too.
But this is kind of where dreams come in handy, because if we're used to paying attention to dreams and decoding our dreams, one of the big tenets in dream work is to look at every aspect of the dream as a part of ourselves. So I am the monster, but I am also the Mother Teresa. I'm also the animal. I'm also the sky. I'm also the award. I'm also the hairbrush. I'm the doorknob. I'm the monster and I'm the miracle. I'm all of it. So it's really a hologram. How am I doing this to myself? So that is the ultimate moment of empowerment. And then that moves us to the E. The natural progression is, now that I know this about myself, I have work to do. So what's my elevated next step? What's the elevated place in consciousness I'm going to now think about, meditate on, or what's the elevated next step? Because the only thing we can do anything about is us. And the good news about that is, if we do change something in ourselves, even if it's just in our internal world, that absolutely changes everything. I mean, it's quantum physics. The microcosm of the universe is in here. So to the degree that we elevate, and I would even dare say, play with the word enlighten, like to the degree that we become interested in that, is the degree to which our hologram changes. And then it ripples out and touches everybody else. It's also, I always joke that at some point I'm going to write a book called The Lazy Girl's Rules for Life, because I want big change, but I don't really want to do all the hard work. So if I just work on myself, well, then things change. Okay. So it's kind of a lazy trick. We change in ourselves and then watch things unfold.
I know we met through Marie Diamond. She's wonderful,
yes,
wonderful human being. And she changes the outside to change the inside.
Speaking of lazy in the best way, because she says, what is it, like 60% of our luck is through the environment, and we have dominion over that. We can move the table. We can put a little drape here. We can add a plant here. We can put something beautiful. I mean, we can do those things. Yeah. And then the hardest part is like, okay, that's the deeper psychological part, and we'll get to that. But let's do all that we can, because we can do a lot more than we think.
Yes. I feel, so earlier you spoke about shame.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big part of trauma.
Yes, yes, yes.
So how did you move past the shame? What happened for you to say, okay, it doesn't matter, like I'm going to have my shitty
nitty gritty shitty list. However, as long as there's a nitty gritty and a shitty in there, it doesn't matter what the order is. Oh man, how did I overcome my shame? I think I was just sharing this with somebody in one of the groups that I facilitate. I was talking about how I've done every form of therapy under the sun. And I think therapy is a great thing. I mean, hypnotherapy, traditional psychological therapy, psychotherapy, whatever. And I think, here's the thing. When we become willing to grow and change, truly willing, then the angels appear. And for me, the first appearance of an angel that helped was a 12-step program. And I could feel that there was something about that. And I was like, okay. And I was actually invited to a woman's AA meeting. And I'm like, I'm not an alcoholic, but I want to die. So I guess that's better than dying. So I'll I'll go. And I shared that with the women, like, I'm an imposter. I don't belong here. I don't think I'm an alcoholic. Yes, I drink. And yes, I have done stupid things that were death defying while I'm in, anyway, they just pounced on me, gave me their phone numbers and said, you belong here. Just stick around. 30 meetings in 30 days, make a gratitude list every day. And I was like, oh, I'm so glad I went. So it was like just following the breadcrumbs. If we ask, drop to our knees. My friend Joey says that there's a little trap door on the floor under where our knees fall. And that trap door leads us to heaven. But we only find it when we hit our knees, when we admit our powerlessness. So that's part of it, is just getting into some form of therapy where we expose our deepest fears with someone, with some trusted somebody. But ultimately for me, in all the therapy I've done, where everything really started to change was when I started to write about it. When I started to write, I had to become really honest with myself. What would I be humiliated by if this got out? So here it is. I wrote it all. I didn't think this would be for anybody's eyes but my own. It was my own therapeutic process. But as I started to get into it, something started to change in my brain. And it was really strange. I was sharing this with my friend Aspen Mattis, who wrote the foreword. She's wrote one of the testimonials, and on the cover of the book, her endorsement. But she became a writing mentor for me. I was on the phone with her and I said, Aspen, something is changing with me. I feel like a magpie, those magpies that always look for the bright and shiny. I said, I'm noticing that when I find a memory that is devastating, I'm actually getting excited about it, because now I know that's my next thing I'm going to write about. And then I would share it with her. And then I would stop feeling ashamed about it, because she would be like, oh, this is amazing. You lived through that? Oh my God. Can I share this with a friend of mine? I'm like, what? Like, it all of a sudden started to become something that she wanted to share. And then I started to share it with a smaller group of friends. They all loved these stories. It's almost like they loved these stories more than my miracle stories. Like, I heard the voice of God, and they're like, yeah, boring, snooze. We want to know how you fell apart, and then how you crawled your way out and then crawled up to the mountaintop. That's a story worth telling, not just, so one day I was at the mountaintop and everything made sense. Like, so I think there was the process of writing about it, and then polishing it, and then sharing it, and noticing the effect of other people, ultimately putting it out. Not that everybody needs to put their shame stories out there, hanging their dirty laundry out to dry. But I think, like you, allowing there to be some kind of a public forum, it somehow takes some of the stigma off. I mean, in Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, the final stage of the hero's journey is not when the hero finally goes through all the shit and gets to the reward. That's not the end. The end is when they come home with the elixir, meaning that you have to come back to the ordinary world with what you learned, and you need to share it with someone, because it's not just for you. As I am lifted and I share about that, then I help to lift other people. As you're lifted and you share your story with me, it uplifts me, and then we have to share it. That's stage 12 of the hero's journey. We got to share it. What about you? How did you overcome the stigma of shame?
I just was like, I don't care anymore. I don't know if it was like a moment in time, but it was just, actually, I'll take it back.
Yeah.
So I kept thinking to myself that this couldn't have happened in vain. There has to be a bigger purpose for me to have gone through what I've gone through. And I will say this also, I'm like you, I don't wear my heart on my sleeve. I don't share things. I have had things happen in my life where that absolutely could have become my purpose.
Right.
My brother died when I was 4 years old. My mother got dementia when I was 10. And there was obviously multitude ripple effect of all of that. So there were many things that I could have said, that's my mission. I am going to go out into the world and do this from a young age. and nothing ever spoke to me. But for some reason, I was like, this couldn't have happened in vain. There has to be a greater purpose for this.
Yeah.
And asking that question over and over is hence why we are here today, is because, and that's what I think got rid of the shame for me, is because I don't care. It is far more vital for me to share my story and to share the stories of the people that I get to have on this couch.
Yeah.
Because that, I just want everybody in the world to know you do not have to be trapped by your trauma, and there is a way to heal.
Absolutely. I think what you just said is the nugget of all nuggets. It's the word purpose. There's got to be some purpose in this. In one of the stories I tell in here is about how this baby I was adopting died, tendril, and it was so devastating. I was so unfunctionable for a while, and I have a bag of tricks from every spiritual teacher that I've actually gotten to interview up close and personal, but all of the normal spiritual tools and tricks didn't work. My broken heart was so fractured. I was just devastated until one day I don't remember what got me onto this kick, but I had owned Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, forever. And I'd read bits and pieces of it, and I knew about his work. But on that day, I found some videos of him talking. I didn't even know there were videos of him talking because he'd been dead for such a long time. I'm like, oh, he was around when there were video. Anyway, there was some video of him and Carl Jung and some audio video. I can't remember exactly, but he was talking about how purpose is that thing that will make or break us, because we humans are storytellers and we're habit makers. The stories that we tell and the habits that we make around those stories will absolutely make or break us. So if we're in a downward spiral, we have to ask ourselves, what story are you telling? And for me, I paused the recording and I was like, okay, the story that I'm telling myself about tendril dying is that there is no God. And this is a shitty world to live in. And this is not a world I really want to live in. Oh, no wonder I'm so depressed. That's the story that's been cycling for months. Okay, so then I resumed play. He said, so you have to tell yourself another story and you can make it up if you want. And I'm thinking, you can't just make up a story. You got to live in reality. But he said, basically, we make up reality based on, so think of something. So I paused the recording again. I thought, okay, I'm just going to be in fantasy land here. Well, what if Tendril was an angel? And I got to be with her physically for 2 weeks. So what if, instead of feeling unlucky that she died so young, what if I got to feel lucky that I got to be with an angel for 2 weeks? Some people don't get 2 minutes with an angel. I got 2 weeks with one. What if I'm lucky? All of a sudden, I felt the first little burst of peace and like some kind of openings. What if, so there was something in that. There was some kind of story that I was telling. And then there was like, all of a sudden, like cut to later, because this is a much longer story. But what I found after I kind of popped out of the trance I was in, people started coming to me with their nightmares. This is around the time that I started becoming known as the nightmare whisperer. And it was like, no matter what difficult nightmare they were having or a real life nightmare, I would share with them about what I had lived through with Tendril. And they would, all of a sudden, it was like they would see something for themselves and that would help to pop them out. All of a sudden, there started to be purpose in what happened to me. It was like, what if that was our soul agreement all along? That she and I were going to have this, and then I would be able to then relate to people that were absolutely shattered, and I'd let them know these are the things that helped me climb my way out. So I think even if we don't know what the purpose is, we have to make one up, and we have to then start looking for what it could be. And like you said, there's got to be a purpose in here. You didn't already know what it was, but what if there is? And even if it's maybe to bear witness to somebody else 50 years later, I lived through this. Maybe that will save somebody or give them a moment of hope. And my God, that is gold. That's almost, we wouldn't want to live through it again, but I wouldn't want to take any of these things away from, I wouldn't want any of these things not to have happened. Even though I wouldn't wish them on my worst enemy, I'm grateful that I lived through them and I have the battle scars to show for them. And that I can now have a legitimate reason to give hope to people. That gives me purpose more than anything else.
That's so beautiful.
And look at you. And I wouldn't have, I mean, the people that you meet along the road of your purpose are angels. So I feel like if I hadn't written this book, I don't know that I'd be sitting here talking to you. We wouldn't have this place where we connect. And I imagine we're going to be friends for a long, long time.
Forever.
So it's
in this life and next.
In this life and the next 20 at least. Yeah. So there's so much gold and good and gratitude that can come from the nitty gritty shitty list.
I love that list.
Got to be a song in there somewhere. That's probably a country song. Maybe I'll write it.
So I want to talk a little bit about the dream doctor.
Sure.
What does that mean? Like how did that happen? I mean,
yeah,
it's like another window. I mean, you're also a hypnotherapist and you help people in so many ways, but dreams are fascinating.
Yeah, well,
it's a window into the soul, I feel.
Yes, it is a window into the soul. I've noticed, like, if I could only take a couple of tools with me to, like, if we all had to evacuate the planet and we could only grab 2 tools with us to take to the next planet, I would grab writing and I would grab dreams. Those would be what I would take with me, because those I can't live without. Every morning I have to write down my dreams. I feel like our dreams are our higher, more vast, infinite self giving us a message, so that while we're in this finite form, living in this 3-dimensional world, we have it's almost like Cyrano de Bergerac. You know, it's like there's somebody that whispers, like Cyrano whispers in our ear, this is what to say, this is what to do. So it's kind of like we're just kind of fumbling along, like, what do I do? Where do I go? How do I do this? And our dreams, they see the whole, it's like the GPS that sees all the different off-ramps and all the different ways that give us this information, this help. And it doesn't mean that we're still not going to have challenges. Hello. Have you read my book? Mm-hmm. But it does mean that there's going to be a lot more grace and a lot more healing. Can I give an example or two?
Please.
Well, gosh, I don't know if I should do this one. I don't know what our time is like, but one of the stories in the book, because this isn't a dream book. This is one of the first and only books that I've written that isn't dream focused, but dreams are the foundation underneath it. Because it's like everything I learned in kindergarten. Everything I learned from dreams, and that's what's helped me here. But there's this. So as my way of adapting to this dysfunctional world, like Krishnamurti says, it's no measure of health to be well adapted to a highly dysfunctional world. So my way of adapting has been to be a people pleaser, to tap dance, fan kick, ta-da-da-da-da-da, to please people so that they won't hate me or won't hurt me or won't kick me off the island. So I had this dream a few years ago that I was on a stage like the Academy Awards, and somebody was presenting me with an award for the best people pleaser of the year. And I was like, oh, that's not good. Wait a minute. But there was somebody that was giving me direction off stage saying, walk over here, walk over there. So I was kind of doing whatever she said. And I'm like, I'm totally being a perfect people pleaser. I'm following whatever she says. And then they say, instead of giving you an award, we're going to give you this beautiful dress to wear. And I'm like, oh, great. But you have to put it on right here.
In front of everybody?
I'm like, they're like, there's no backstage. You have to. So I'm like, oh, and it's like a full audience, like Academy Awards. And I'm like, okay, because I do whatever people tell me to do. So I turn my back to the audience thinking that's going to help. But I step into this dress, and so I'm like naked. And I try to zip up the dress, but it's too small. It doesn't fit. So my ass is just out there on the stage. And that's where the dream ends. And I'm, oh no. Okay, how's our time?
We good.
So I was like, what the hell? This isn't like a Freddy Krueger nightmare where there's blood and guts, but it was like, this is the worst thing ever. So I did my job. I worked on the dream like I normally do, but I still couldn't get rid of this feeling of shame. And so I did, okay, so it's like I pulled out the big guns. I always tell people, when all else fails, get creative, write about it, and in a creative way. So I wrote a little story about this dream. Can I share it with you?
Yes.
It's sort of in a rhyme. So I changed the ending of the dream, but here it goes. My ass is hanging out on stage tonight in front of everyone. My deepest fear expressed because I can't fit in my dress. I'm supposed to be winning an award, a reward for being a people pleaser extraordinaire, like Fred Astaire on air, minus Ginger Rogers, because she's not there. She's trying so hard to get it right. She's holding tight to the rope she walks, trying so hard to not grow old, to not be too bold, because they won't like you. They'll reject you. They won't respect you. They'll just reject you. Well, what the hell? I did what they said. I became the Walking Dead. I wore the little dress they swore would look best on me and my figure, but now they'll have an image that's sure to linger of me and my naked glory trying to wiggle into this ridiculous story real quick before they get a good look at my ass, real quick before they have time to ask, well, why not change in a back room? Why not change in a back womb? Because there is no backstage, not at this age. It's all up front and there's nowhere to hide. So you're forced to see my backside. And the moon, oh, she's full tonight. So I'm stuck on this stage in this dress that doesn't fit. I'm stuck in this shame, and it feels like my people pleasing is broken. That's it. I quit. I'm out. I'm done. Whoever you are up there, I'm waving my white flag. You've won. I unzip my dress. I take off my distress. Exit the stage. Exit backstage. I don't know. I exit somehow, naked as a jaybird, walk in a fine line until it hits me that the worst thing just happened to me. My ass hanging out for all to see. But it didn't kill me. In fact, I'm still me. In fact, more me. Because now I have permission to be free from the chains that used to bind me, to the disease to please that made me blind to the fact that I'd been in a Stepford trance. But now I can do my own kind of dance, to my own rhythm and my own grooves and my own gyrations and my own moves. And this is feeling really good. I could end this dream right here. But my stage of shame is still behind. I got to go back and claim what's mine. After all, it's still my ass that's on the line. I got to figure out how to get this right, how to plug into my light with all my might, because how can I love if I'm not really there? How can I participate if I don't care? I think I deserve this award, a reward for getting my ass back in my body. In my acceptance speech, I'll share about my glorious derriere out there for all to see. But it didn't kill me. I'm still alive. In fact, now I thrive.
That's amazing. I love that. I want to actually just use that as my own affirmation.
Minus the ass hanging out part.
So I have a few more questions for you, and we are getting near to the end of our time now, but I do want to get these ones in.
Yes, whatever.
What if you don't dream?
Well, then you're not human. We all dream.
So what if you don't remember your dreams?
There you go.
How do you get yourself to remember your dreams?
Yes. Perfect question, because most people don't remember their dreams because dreams are easy. They're easy to not remember, because the moment we do anything when we wake up in the morning, the moment we check our phone, we do anything other than stay in the dream, then it's gone. And it could be the biggest, most healing dream. It doesn't matter. It will be gone in seconds. I mean, it's rare. Some of us get our dream back, like while we're in the shower or driving in the car. Those are freebies. But here's the trick. We have to dedicate the first few moments of our morning to absolutely nothing else except our dream. We can't think about anything else. We can't wonder about the weather, the news, how our kids are doing, how anybody else is doing. It's got to be ourselves and our dreams. So the idea is, when you first notice that you're waking up in the morning, ideally, you don't wake up to an alarm. If you do wake up to an alarm, the trick is to set it for 15 minutes before you have to actually wake up, so that you can go back asleep and then go back to sleep with the intent to remember a dream. But if you wake up naturally, ideally, the moment you start to wake up, stay in your sleep position in exactly how you were sleeping. Stay right there and review and rewind the last thing that you were thinking about, because you're always thinking something. Even if it's, oh shit, I forgot my dream. Well, that's something. Or grandma, why am I thinking about grandma? Whatever it is, replay it several times in your mind. And then as soon as you get out of bed, write it down. I record it into a voice memo and sometimes a voice note on my phone. I used to use an app that turns out it was broadcasting live. I had a dream about Lady Gaga once, and somebody said, oh, Kelly, your dream about Lady Gaga's on the internet. I'm like, what? So now it's very private. So write it down. And here's the other trick. If you're not in the habit of doing this and you feel like, no, I just can't remember my dream, then just get in the habit of writing something down first thing in the morning, because there's always some thought that we're thinking. And if we get in the habit of writing something down, it's probably tethered to what we were dreaming about. But if we get in the habit of that, then when we do have a dream that comes in with clarity, then we'll have the habit of knowing where to put it. So that's the first way to do it. And there's some other things about, if we drink before we go to sleep, if we smoke pot, if we take any mind-altering chemicals, sometimes that can just make it harder to remember. It doesn't mean that we still aren't having the dreams, and we just have to work a little harder to pull it in. We just can't expect it to land in our lap. It's not the way the brain works. The part of the brain that does the dreaming actually shuts off when we wake up. It's kind of like passing the baton. I touch my forehead because when we're in our waking dream right now, our prefrontal cortex is primarily what's operating. When we're sleeping, it's our limbic brain that is mostly doing the dreaming. And yes, there's a little bit of back and forth, but mostly it's like we pass the baton. So we have to capture the dream before we've completely given over to our prefrontal cortex.
Okay, so unfortunately, this is going to be my final question.
No! Don't traumatize me. I don't want it ever done.
What would you recommend as the first step or the next step somebody takes in their healing journey?
At this moment, I would suggest that they practice the Ogle method. On my website, I have a free form. If people sign up, they'll immediately get how to ogle your situation. And also I send them a free jet set formula as well. That's my jet set dream interpretation formula. So I would say grab a journal or a friend that you trust and go through OGLE by just, how is this offensive to me? Give yourself permission to be offensive, and then look for the gold or what might be gold. Then look for, how do I do this to myself? How am I what is my part that I play in the looking glass? And then what's the elevated step? And somebody just sent me an email saying that they did a 20-page ogle in their journals, because about 10 of those pages were just on what was offensive. But she said it turned around once she got into the G and the L and the E. So I would say that's the first thing to start to move your way quickly into instead of the PTSD, which we're all familiar with.
Oh, that was another thing I
PTG.
wanted to talk to you about. I think that's amazing.
The quick thing is that we all go through things. And there's a study that said that half of us will endure PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder, which we all know about. But few people know about what half of us are more inclined to go through, which is PTG, post-traumatic growth. This is where we look back and realize that immediately following that trauma, there was tremendous healing, tremendous awareness, tremendous growth, like off the charts, new skills, new levels of resiliency. And as a result of what we had endured and what we come through with. So we want to get that. We want to have that post-traumatic growth. And if you don't feel it yet, at least know it's out there to get. So I think OGLE is a process to get us there a little more quickly than it might happen if we just laid back and let it happen. According to research, it takes 3 to 8 years to come through something, so a traumatic event. So, but I think it can take 3 to 8 minutes or months if we really look for the gold and really expedite our transformation. We have some say in that matter.
I had a guest on my show, and she said that through her years of practice, she can now go in and transform within 24 hours.
Exactly. Well, this I think is the next level, and the only story in my book that is real time is the story where I got attacked by 2 bull mastiffs, and one of them grabbed a hold of my arm and was thrashing me. And it was, I mean, bull mastiffs are like huge, and that's a whole other story. But what I realized was I could move the trauma out as soon as I was safe. Like, you first have to get to a place where you're no longer in danger. So the dogs were away from me. Their owner had taken care of them, but I shook. I let myself do I let myself look like an imbecile for I don't know, a couple minutes. We're crying and then, oh, okay, I'm good. Kind of like animals in nature. They do this naturally. And all the other stories, the transformation came in hindsight. But that was the one that I'm proud of that scar. I still have my scar. It's possible to get on the other side of it, I would say within 24 hours and maybe even a few minutes if we let ourselves, once we're safe, once we let ourselves just get it out as if we were animals in nature. We could learn a lot from those animals. As soon as they're out of harm's way, they do this tremor. And then they're like, all right, we're cool. What's next? What's for dinner?
That's true. Kelly, where can people find you?
Kelly Sullivan Walden is my website. And I always like to say, if that's too hard to spell, because it's a long name, they can go to ihadthestrangestdream.com. That's also the name of my first book, ihadthestrangestdream.com. And people can find me on Instagram, Kelly S. Walden, and on TikTok and on Twitter. And Kelly S. Walden basically is a way to find me. Or just put in Kelly Sullivan Walden and you should be able to find it on Facebook and all of those places. I have free gifts that I offer on my website, kellysullivanwalden.com, or ihadthestrangestdream.com. The OGLE method, it's kind of like a journaling prompt. It's like a mini journal. And also my Jet Set formula and a bunch of other free offerings there. And I have a dream retreat that's coming up in Costa Rica where I'll teach people about how to move from tragic to magic and using dream work to do that. And dream work practitioner training, that's all coming up it's all on my website.
That's so exciting. Well, thank you so much.
Natasha, thank you so much for paying forward what you've learned and for being so resilient and finding purpose in that pain and being somebody who gives me hope and who just strengthens so many people. So thank you.
And thank you for watching Trauma Undone. Let your healing begin.